You're listening to Missing Persons, brought to you by AbJack Entertainment. Be sure to check out some of the other great true crime podcasts from this network, including The Murder in My Family, DNA ID, Beyond Bizarre True Crime, Zodiac Speaking, Scene of the Crime, and 3 Men and a Mystery. All of these podcasts are available for you to binge on right now, wherever you listen to podcasts. Subscribe where you're listening to this podcast so you don't miss an episode.
The views and opinions expressed by guests on this podcast do not necessarily represent those of the podcast, its creators, or sponsors. If you would like to discuss a missing persons case on this podcast, please be sure to visit missingpersonspodcast.net. This episode may contain unsettling or disturbing subject matter. Listener discretion is advised.
Welcome to Missing Persons, a podcast dedicated to spreading the word about people who have vanished under mysterious or unexplained circumstances, and the family members who are looking for answers. I'm Jess Betancourt.
And I'm Mike Morford. Together we created this podcast to help give a voice to people who continue to search for their missing loved ones, in some cases even after decades have gone by. In each episode, you'll hear from Jess giving listeners the backstory and the basic facts of the disappearance.
Then Mike will speak with someone who's intimately connected to the missing person, and his guest will share their story with us.
Please stay tuned at the conclusion of this episode to hear about our Patreon program and our commitment to help find people who have gone missing. We'll also share with you where you can find more information and how you can join our team and help our efforts. You'll get recommendations for other podcasts we think you'll enjoy, and more.
So sit back and enjoy this episode, and who knows, maybe you can help us find someone who's missing. Episode 49, David Allen Cohen. David Allen Cohen has been missing from Southampton, New Jersey since 2015. 42-year-old David was somewhat disabled after a nearly fatal bout of pancreatitis, was unable to work, and lived with his parents in West Virginia. But most of his friends, his own son, his sister, and other extended family lived in New Jersey, where David was originally from. He was a graduate of Jackson Memorial High School in Jackson. So even though he lived several hours away, David often made trips to the Garden State, staying with a very good friend or relatives there on lengthy visits. On April 20th, 2015, David set out on one of his road trips from West Virginia to New Jersey. He was scheduled to stay with his buddy, a very close friend who had a home in Lacey Township, and with whom Dave stayed regularly. David was very familiar with the rural area of Ocean County where his friend lived. He stopped along his drive at a Walmart in Virginia to buy a prepaid cell phone because he had lost his own phone. He didn't take it out of the package, but called his mom from a store phone to tell her he would call her when he arrived in New Jersey. He left the store and went on his way. When he was within 20 minutes of his destination, Dave stopped for the night at a motel. He called his friend who was expecting him and left a very normal-sounding message saying he was too tired to continue driving and he was going to crash at the Red Lion Motel on Route 206 in Southampton, New Jersey. He checked in around 9:30 p.m. When Dave's friend didn't hear from him the next day, he called the motel to see if he was there. The owner of the motel told him that Dave had requested a delayed checkout, planning on staying until 3 p.m. He had not checked out, though, and his truck was still parked at the motel. At this point, the hotel manager went to Dave's room and found that he was not there. A pair of his jeans was folded on the bed, which did not appear to have been slept in. The manager bagged the jeans and placed them in a storage room and cleaned the room in preparation for a new occupant. Meanwhile, Dave's friend was growing increasingly concerned. He called Dave's mom, who called around to family to see if anyone had heard from Dave. One of the people she called was Dave's sister, Jen, who also lived in New Jersey and who is our guest today. Jen's first thought was that her brother must have gotten lost or taken a wrong turn, but she knew that Dave was very familiar with the area, so that didn't make a lot of sense. They found out from Dave's friend that Dave had left a message saying he was staying at the motel for the night. Dave's mom called the police and reported him missing, and Jen headed over to the motel. When Jen saw Dave's truck parked outside the motel room, things became increasingly perplexing. All Dave's luggage was in the back of the truck, and his motel room key would turn out to be in the luggage. The truck was locked, but on the front passenger seat were all the usual things that Dave would travel with: his sunglasses, his cigarettes, and his nose spray. The new cell phone was in the truck as well, still in its plastic packaging. The only things missing were the keys to the truck, Dave's wallet, and Dave himself. Jen talked to the motel staff, who told her that Dave had not acted unusually in any way when he checked in. He was very polite. The Red Lion Motel is in a tiny commercial enclave within a large rural area. Across the street from the motel is the state police barracks. A gas station, diner, and pizza place are pretty much it. There's nowhere in the area that Dave's family can think of that he might have tried to walk to, and there would be no reason to with his truck sitting right there. Unfortunately, there were no surveillance cameras at the Red Lion. State police asked the few small businesses around the motel for any surveillance footage, and on the video footage from the pizza place, Red Star Pizza, they spotted Dave. He came in around 9:40 p.m., ordered food, and waited 10 minutes while it was prepared. Jen thinks he ordered a sandwich. He was alone, and it was an order for food for one. When he got the food in its paper bag, he went outside and got into his truck. He pulled out of the lot and turned right, heading in the direction of the motel. But there is no indication as to whether he ever actually made it back to his room. Unfortunately, since the room had been cleaned before the family and police were able to view it, there was no way to know whether he had eaten his sandwich in the room. On the surveillance footage, which detectives have viewed multiple times and which Jen herself has seen, Dave appears to be completely normal and calm, just patiently waiting for his food. One thing that Jen did notice, though, was that Dave was not wearing the ring he always wore. When he paid for his food at the Red Star register, she could see that it was not on his finger. That ring has never been found. And that was the last time Dave was seen. One person reported that they might have seen him walking in the area, but that sighting has not been confirmed. No one knows whether he went back to his room that night or where he possibly could have gone. The police have conducted multiple searches of the surrounding areas, including with sent dogs and helicopters, to no avail. Nothing relating to Dave has ever been found. Jen and her family have also combed the area but have come up empty each time. One of the search teams came upon a body in a wooded area of Burlington County, but it was too decomposed to be Dave. The body was later identified as Angelina Kokuza, a 61-year-old Lumberton woman who had gone missing more than 3 years earlier. Jen is concerned that Dave might have been the victim of a robbery gone wrong. Perhaps someone waylaid him in the dark outside his motel. He had about $400 cash on him, so he could be a target. But his room key being found in his luggage is very strange. If he were heading back to his room, why wouldn't it have been on his person? The police did search Dave's motel room, but as I said, it had already been cleaned, despite his jeans being there and his truck still being parked outside. No one can figure out why Dave would have stopped at the motel so close to his final destination, or why he would have extended checkout the next day until 3 p.m. Dave Cohen was 42 years old when he went missing. He is white, about 5'7", and weighs 170 pounds. He has hazel eyes and a bald head, as well as 2 tattoos, an iron cross on his right abdomen and a wreath and rod on his upper right chest. He was last seen wearing a green t-shirt, blue jeans, and black shoes. Mike Morford sat down with Dave's sister, Jen Ingram, to talk about her brother's case. That conversation is coming up after a word from our sponsors.
Hi, Jen, and welcome to Missing Persons.
Hi.
We're happy to have you on to talk about your brother Dave's case and hopefully bring some attention to it. I know the anniversary is coming up, so we'll hopefully get the word out there so more people know about the case. And for me, this is a case that hits close to home because I used to live in the very area where he went missing from. So it's one that I'm able to provide a little bit more clarity, I think, to listeners as we go along here too, and paint a little bit of a picture of the area. It's definitely an odd case. There's some puzzling clues. Before we get into all of that, can you tell us a little bit about Dave and what was going on in his life?
Sure. Well, at the time, he was living with my parents in West Virginia. He wasn't working, So he was staying with them, to get back on his feet. Now, we're originally from New Jersey. So he would, be there, and then he will come to New Jersey pretty often, like every few months. And he would either stay with me or his closest friend. And, he would just kind of visit with us for maybe a week, sometimes a little more. He was a great guy. He was really smart, very intelligent, very funny. He was, very kind, to everyone. He was a great brother. He really was.
No, was he working at the time that he went missing?
No.
Okay.
No, he was on disability because he developed pancreatitis, so he wasn't working.
Was that pretty debilitating for him?
Yeah, he almost died. He had surgery, and it was pretty bad.
But he was still able to travel back and forth. Was he on the verge of recovering, or?
Yeah, at that time he was, yeah.
Yeah. How often did he come back and forth to New Jersey?
Every few months, I would say.
And would he stay for, a couple days or a week at a time?
He would stay for, like a week at a time, sometimes more, sometimes maybe a few weeks. His closest friend had a really big house, so, he had an extra room to stay in. So he would definitely stay, a decent amount of time.
Was this the friend that he was intending to see in April 2015 when he went missing?
Yes.
Okay. And just, I think it's important to touch on, you mentioned your family's from New Jersey, which us New Jerseyans call South Jersey.
Yeah.
He was familiar with this area, so traveling back and forth, it's not a place that he wasn't, aware of his surroundings. He knew the area, it sounds like.
Yes.
And
yeah, he knew the area.
Okay. And I think for listeners, it's important to sort of paint a picture. And since I lived in the area too, I think I can, let people know what it was like. Your brother was staying at a hotel when he vanished. That was around Red Line Circle, which is a big circle, a traffic circle with 4 roads that go in different directions. There's a state police barracks directly across the circle. So it seems like, not the kind of place where something like this would happen when there's a big police station right there. And then, there's the diner around the circle, a gas station. There was a pizza place nearby. But besides those few things right there, it's sort of, I don't know what the best word, some people would say out in the sticks.
Yeah,
it's sort of because you're in one direction goes down towards the Jersey Shore, one goes towards Philadelphia, and the rest just go out to areas in different directions. There's not a lot out there. It's in the Pine Barrens, which is
correct.
To people that don't live there or probably not familiar with the Pine Barrens, but it's nothing but pine trees as far as you can see. So this is the area where this happened, and it's not, that particular area is not known for high crime or anything like that. So where this happened is of interest, because it's just not the typical area where you would see something like this happening. Obviously, I think in a lot of towns you can drive 10 or 15 minutes and wind up in areas where there is more crime, but this typically wasn't that kind of area, and it's just a very rural area. So hopefully that gives listeners a little bit more of an idea of what this place was like. But tell us about, as far as you understand it, what happened. Your brother arrives at this hotel, he checks in. Walk us through what happened from there, as far as you understand it.
Okay, well, from what I understand is he got to the motel at about 9:20, and he checked in. I guess he put some stuff in his room. Then the pizzeria that it's in a plaza, and it's right there. He drove his truck. I'm not sure why. Maybe he was going somewhere after, but instead of walking over, he drove his truck. It was on surveillance that, he got something to eat, and he was waiting. He waited about 10 minutes. So that's how we know what time he was at the pizza place. He got his food, and then he walked out, and then you could see he was in his truck, and it seemed like he made a right, but the surveillance didn't really go too far, but we assume that he made a right, like he was going back to the motel. Not really sure why he would drive over there, so that's why I'm not sure if he was going somewhere after. Seemed like on their surveillance that he made a right, like he was going toward the motel. So I don't know if he went back to the motel or if he was maybe going somewhere. And then the next morning when he didn't show up at his friend's house, his friend called the motel and said to the lady, my friend is staying there. He hasn't showed. Is he still there? And she said, yeah, his truck is still here. And then his friend just assumed that maybe he slept in. And then when he still hadn't shown, he called back and he said, can you go check in his room? Is he still there? And then the lady, the motel manager, had checked and he wasn't in his room. And she had told him. And at that point, his friend, was concerned and called the police. But you have to wait the 48 hours. So they wouldn't do anything as of yet. And then when it was the 48 hours, his friend had called the police station and made a report. And at the time, I didn't know right away. But when I did find out, I'm the one who started dealing with the New Jersey State Police about all of this.
And during that 48 hours where you're waiting for the police to really be able to do anything, what happened with the motel room? Was it closed up? Did they rent it out to someone else? What happened there? Do you know?
Yes. From what I understand is that the manager had one pair of jeans on the bed, from what she had told me. And she wrapped them up in a plastic bag and put them in the utility closet before the police even came. And then cleaned up the room, for the next customer. I don't know if it was rented. I don't think it was rented out before the police came. But then when the police came, they looked in the room and they didn't find anything in the garbage because she already had cleaned the room, so there was nothing in there. In fact, I was the one that had his jeans because I had asked for them. And then I had told the police I had the jeans, so then they asked for them, so I gave them the jeans. So, yeah, it seemed like the manager just kind of, when she realized he wasn't there, she just kind of took his stuff, cleaned it up, and was ready for the next customer. But I just don't think another customer had ended up renting the room at that moment.
Now, to your knowledge, do you know if when they cleaned it up, did they find pizza in there, or the pizza box that he had last been seen carrying?
Well, he actually didn't get pizza. I think he might have got a sandwich, because on the surveillance, it looked like he got a sandwich.
Okay.
So there was no, garbage in the room, the police said. So now I don't know if they asked the motel manager if when she cleaned out the garbage, if there was anything in there. She really didn't give much away as to, if there was garbage there, what was there.
That could be an important clue, obviously, too, because if that would show possibly that he made it back to his room, had dinner, and then something else happened, but we don't really know that. But we do know that his truck was there And from my understanding, it was locked up. Was there anything unusual about it or anything missing out of it?
No. The weird thing is that everything was there. He smoked, so he had a carton of cigarettes on the passenger side. Then, just like an open pack. His sunglasses were there. He had nose spray. That was there. Like, everything was there. It's not like, because some people said, oh, well, maybe he just left. And I'm like, you're not going to just leave and leave all, like, your things there. If you're a smoker, you're going to bring your cigarettes. In the trunk, he had his suitcase, his clothes, he had his laptop in there. And he was a very clean, tidy person. He even had his shoe shining kit, and all that just doesn't scream, hey, I'm just going to come to New Jersey and then just walk off and leave. So I just thought it was very odd that everything was there. It was like he planned on coming back.
Yeah, and again, I go back to that area. That's not a place you're going to walk off and go anyplace. There's just nothing there besides, again, local pizza place, a gas station, a diner, but there's no place to really go. It's not like a city where you can, find lots of stuff to do, that kind of stuff. So,
correct.
So it seemed like everything was there like normal in his truck. It was locked up. Did they find his car keys at all? Do you know?
No, the only thing they didn't find was his car keys and his wallet. They did find the motel key. It was in his luggage. Not sure it was there, why it was there, but it was there. It was an actual key, not the car key.
So the key that he would use to access his room was inside his luggage?
Correct, in the trunk.
Okay, that's interesting. So in talking to the people, and I don't know if you yourself went back and talked to these same people that the police talked to, but between you talking to them, the police talking to them, did the pizza shop, besides the surveillance, were they able to provide anything as far as details about your brother's attitude? Was he acting normal? Was he alone? That kind of stuff?
Yeah, I talked to them, the police talked to them. They said he was very courteous. He ordered his food. He waited 10 minutes. I even saw the surveillance. It was grainy, but I could even see he was just waiting for his food. He didn't seem under any distress or anything like that. When I talked to the motel lady manager, she had said the same thing. He's very nice when he checked in, like nothing seemed off. He left a message for his friend the night that he checked into the motel. He said, he was tired from the drive because it takes about 5 or 6 hours. And he said, I'm going to stay over at this motel. I'll see you in the morning. And the message was, normal Dave. There was nothing like you would think, oh, he sounds off.
Okay. And as far as the hotel staff, were they pretty cooperative with you and the police? Did they answer questions and help as much as they could, do you think?
Well, there's the motel manager, and then there was her husband. At first, the motel manager lady seemed very nice, sympathetic. And then I started dealing with a private investigator. And the one day we went to the pizzeria, and he was, telling me how he works, what he could do for me. And then he said, I want to go talk to the motel manager. So I said, okay. And I was standing in the parking lot waiting for him to come out. And he had one of these flyers. And then he comes out and he said to me, how come you didn't tell me they called an ambulance for him that night? And I said, what? What are you talking about? He said he went in and the motel manager told him that somebody called an ambulance for him. And I said, well, this is the first time I'm hearing of this. So I went back in with him and I pointed to the flyer, to my brother's face. And I said, somebody called an ambulance for this man. And she said, yeah. I repeated it again, and she said, yeah, but her demeanor had changed. The private investigator told me from when he originally went in. She was, talkative, freely giving him information. And then he said when I went in and I was asking her, she, I could even tell, she closed up. She didn't want to give any more information. I asked her, I said, well, you're the manager. And then she said, well, no, I'm not the manager. She lives, I think she said Pennsylvania. I don't know. I asked to speak to the manager, but she said she couldn't get a hold of her. So then it was very odd at that point, because I'm thinking, why didn't you tell me that someone called an ambulance for him? I was very confused at that point. And immediately after I, left with the private investigator, I went by myself to the New Jersey State Police, and I had informed them of what just happened, and they checked, and they said there was no ambulance dispatched to the motel that night. And I said, well, she told me somebody called an ambulance. So they said, they would talk to her. They just went to the motel and talked to her. I was kind of hoping they would bring her to the station and, speak with her. And then they just told me, she thought she heard one of the police say that, I guess, on one of the first searches. But that just doesn't make sense to me. I think she was holding something back.
Okay, and you mentioned that her husband, maybe because of her husband, his presence, or maybe something he said to her made her clam up, you think?
No, he wasn't in the office at that time. I just saw him.
Okay.
He was cleaning and stuff. So really it was just a hi, and he wasn't really in the picture. I just seen him there.
And did they have any surveillance cameras at the hotel? Do you know?
No, they didn't.
Okay. How many? And it's been a while since I've driven by this motel, probably 1,000 times, but I don't remember how big it is. Do you know how many rooms it has?
I don't. Well, where he was staying, there was about maybe 4, facing the road, and then there was another side, so maybe 8 total. But then there was a little upstairs part, toward the back. You could walk on a second floor, and then there were some. So okay. If I had to guess, maybe 20 or less.
Yeah, I was going to say I don't remember it being very big.
Yeah.
Were there other people staying in the motel that night, and were they talked to by police as well?
From what I heard, the police did speak to the other people that were there. Nobody knew anything. I even stood in the driveway, and some of the people that were staying there, because there are some long-term people that will stay there for a week, maybe more. And whenever somebody would walk by, say they were going to the plaza, then coming back, I was questioning them. And some of the people, honestly, it was like they didn't want to even say anything. No, I don't know anything. I kind of just got that.
Like they didn't want to be involved, or...
Exactly.
Oh. Now, one thing I wanted to mention was just going for his drive from this motel to the friend's house that he planned on visiting. Now, the friend lived in Ocean County in Lacey Township. This is Burlington County, where this motel was, but the county line is right there, 5 minutes down the road, so it's not that far apart. And I'm guessing it's 30 minutes to Lacey Township?
Yeah, I believe so.
Yeah, so well, my question is, and you know your brother more than me, why wouldn't he have just driven that extra 30 minutes to get to his friend's house? Why would he have stopped at this motel and rented a room there when he didn't have to? He could have made that drive an extra 30 minutes. Was he the type that would get really tired and say, hey, I'm not going to drive this extra 30 minutes? Or do you think there's any possibility that he had some business there or was meeting someone there at the motel?
Honestly, I don't know. I really don't know. That's always been something in my head, like, why did he stop there? I mean, I could see if he was tired, maybe he was really tired and out of safety, he figured, let me just stop. But other than that, I don't know.
Yeah. Now, his friend that initially brought attention to him being missing, has he been cooperative? Has he answered questions?
Yes.
Okay, he's been ruled out as, maybe not having any kind of involvement, that kind of thing?
Yeah, he's a family friend. He's a great guy. He was, like my brother's best friend.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Is there any other friends or any other associates or anyone at all that had any kind of interaction during that time period when he was at the motel?
Not that I know of, because what happened is my brother lost his cell phone, and then when he was still in Virginia, he bought a cell phone, just like a prepaid one, I guess, not one that has like a plan. And he had called my mom from the Verizon store and said, I'm not going to set this up right now, so I won't be able to talk to you while I'm on the road. I'll set it up when I get to New Jersey, and then I'll call you. When I looked in the car, you could tell that he tried to open up the package, but it was that hard plastic. And it was open enough, but not enough to get the cell phone out. So that part is true. He didn't get it out enough to set it up.
So this was like basically a phone to get him through until he got like a permanent phone to replace the one he lost. Okay. But he didn't even use this phone because it was still in the packaging.
Correct.
Okay.
I think he tried to, but maybe it was just too hard to like open, and he said, I'll just do it when I get to New Jersey. Yeah,
and you maybe need a knife or something to slice it open, or scissors or something like that. That makes sense. I know that I've seen in some of the flyers that authorities were asking hunters in the area to look out for Dave, and again, this is an area with lots of woods, there's farm fields, stuff like that, so this is a rural area. Was it searched at all? And if so, was anything found connected to your brother?
It was searched a lot from what I know. I mean, the police did searches with dogs. They did multiple searches, different areas. And no, they didn't find anything of his.
Oh, and now we're coming up on, it's approaching the 7-year anniversary since he went missing. Just no answers. It's as if he, someone drove up, picked him up, and he just drove off. Is that a possibility? Is there any possibility in your mind that he would have met up with someone or went someplace with someone?
Well, the one thing that has always gone to me is that when my private investigator went in, I don't think I even got this far, but he went in and she had said somebody called an ambulance for him that night. So he had around $400 on him in cash. Just because the motel it's a small motel, it doesn't have a very good reputation. I think that somebody possibly, was trying to steal his money or something. And the manager, and this is just what I think, but I think that she had came out, witnessed something going on with my brother and a guy, maybe two guys, I don't know, and they held up a cell phone and said, "Oh, we're calling an ambulance." Like maybe he was down on the ground, and because of how the motel is, she just kind of kept her head down and just walked like, "Oh, I'm not getting involved in this," because that's the only thing that would make sense. Like, why would she say somebody called an ambulance for him that night? But then when the police questioned her, she said, oh, I thought I heard a cop say that. And again, this is just my thought, but it seems like it could fit.
Sure. I think in your situation, you're thinking a million different things of what could have possibly happened, and it's very very puzzling case. And again, knowing that area as well as I do, it's not an area that you could easily, without trying to get lost in, because you'd have to, the circle around there is very populated with lots of traffic, different businesses. And unless he walked off into the woods and went someplace on his own like that, it would seem unlikely that he would do that. Now, by all counts, he was no signs of depression. He was acting normal. He wouldn't have just walked off into the woods and harmed himself, anything like that.
He did have depression at the time. He was fine though. And even if he did walk off into the woods, they searched that area and they would have came across him. Sure.
And going by the account of the people that talked to him, he seemed to be in good spirits and acting fine. And, I don't know too many people that get a sandwich and then would walk off and then harm themselves someplace and then never be found in the process. So it is very strange. A lot of puzzling details. It's got to be very frustrating for your family to not have any solid answers, I imagine.
Yeah, it's a lot, and it's pretty much been only me kind of dealing with this, which is really hard. I mean, he was my brother, and, I talked to him a couple of days before, he left to come to New Jersey, and he, seemed fine, and I was excited to see him.
What's the status of the case now? Where do things stand today?
It's a cold case. I've got in touch with the police. It's been a while, but the last time I did, a woman from Missing Persons was dealing with it. And I had called her, and then they said, oh, well, she's not dealing with it anymore. So-and-so at New Jersey State Police is dealing with it. And then I called them, and, the one sergeant that was dealing with it is not on the case anymore. So it's kind of like it goes from this person to that person. So really the status is that it's just a cold case. And it's been 7 years, so unless they have any new information, they're not looking into it because there's no leads.
Is there anything that you wish had been done that hasn't been done that you'd still like to see perhaps done?
There are some things, but it's too late now. When the police came, I watched them go through his truck, but I wish they had dusted for prints on the truck. I mean, maybe somebody was there and, got in his truck, and maybe they drove somewhere. Maybe that person would know some information. Also, he had a long-term girlfriend, very on and off, and he had broke it off probably about a year or two previously. But I had one of the first things I said to them was, he was with this girl for 20 years. She's someone that, you should talk to. Someone that's, it was almost like, his wife. And they didn't interview her for about a year, which is, crazy to me.
And was she cooperative when they finally did talk to her?
Not at first, because they did call and request that she come down to the station, and she wouldn't return calls. And then eventually they had to go out to see her. And they told me that, she checks out, everything, seems okay. She doesn't seem like she was involved. But they waited a whole year to interview her.
Wow. And is she from South Jersey or back in West Virginia?
No, South Jersey.
Okay. Well, it's just, frustrating. I can imagine that to just not have certain things done early on and then, try and do them later on. But obviously that as time passes, it's not going to be as reliable or whatever. So here you are 7 years later coming up on the anniversary and still searching for answers. And it sounds like you're on your own from what you're saying, but we're going to help you again, get the word out and let people know about the case. Can you tell us about any social media pages or websites that are set up so people can learn more about Dave's case or maybe provide information if they have it?
Sure. I made a page for him on Facebook called Searching for Dave. I did have a GoFundMe page, which I got the money that I was hoping to get, and that was to provide for a search and rescue team to go out to look. That was probably 2 years after he, was missing. So really, it's just the Searching for Dave page on Facebook.
Okay. We'll be sure to put that in the notes so people can find that. Is there any kind of reward being offered or anything like that?
Unfortunately not.
Okay. Well, hopefully people will do the right thing. If they happen to know anything, they'll just come forward to do the right thing and help your family out by providing some information. And people, hopefully, that are listening in that area can go on social media and share Dave's story with people and let them know that your family's still looking for answers and that he's still missing out there. I can't thank you enough, Jen, for coming on and sharing Dave's story with us, and I hope you do find out what happened to him.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of Missing Persons. If you can provide any information to help solve the case we discussed in this episode, please contact the appropriate authorities.
If you enjoy this podcast, please take a moment to tell your friends about missing persons and invite them to listen to the show. Word of mouth will help us grow and bring these cases to a larger audience. You can also help us by taking a moment to rate and review Missing Persons on the platform you're listening to us now on.
We'd like to tell you a little bit about our Patreon program. If you visit patreon.com/missingpodcast, you can sign up to help this podcast through ongoing monthly support. As a thank you, we'll give you an on-air shout-out, a thank you card and sticker, plus you'll get early access to ad-free episodes of the show and any bonus content.
Your Patreon support also goes towards helping the missing, because every dollar that we earn through Patreon will be split with charlieproject.org, the wonderful website that's been sharing information about so many missing persons cases for years. We hope you'll consider supporting the show. Just a reminder that new episodes of Missing Persons air every other Saturday. If you want to find us on social media, you can search Facebook for Missing Persons Podcast. And we're also on Twitter with the handle @missing_pod. And of course, you can find us on our website, missingpersonspodcast.net. As we wrap up this episode, we'd like to play a preview of a true crime podcast we think you'll like. It's called Twisted Travel and True Crime. Be sure to give it a listen. On behalf of Jess Betancourt, this is Mike Morford saying thanks, and we'll see you next time on Missing Persons.
This is Twisted Travel and True Crime. Welcome aboard. Let me entertain you with crazy travel stories, true crime stories, and survival stories from all over the world. I've covered insane asylum murders, being buried alive, a crazy trip to Kinky Cottage, as well as being trapped under 100 feet of water for 60 hours. I can't forget to mention plots for financial gain, serial killers, and so much more. Please listen to Twisted Travel and True Crime on your favorite podcast platform.
Missing Persons is produced under the name AbJack Entertainment by Mike Morford and Jessica Betancourt. It's hosted by Mike Morford and Jessica Betancourt, with writing and research by Jessica Betancourt and editing by Mike Morford. Be sure to listen every other Saturday for an all-new episode of Missing Persons.